Good afternoon or evening, wherever you may be. We're from all over the United States and we are certified ULA coaches. Happy to be with you tonight here live. We've got some certified ULA coaches that we've assembled tonight to tell you how they overcame obstacles and still achieve their dreams. So we hope you'll look forward to listening to them and you'll grab a pen and paper and take notes as they tell their story. Our first coach tonight is Brian Turner, and he lives in Dothan, Alabama with his wife, Jacqueline. They currently have 3 kids who are grown, and Brian is also a pastor and a biblical counselor for Teen Challenge. Of course, he's also a certified ULA life coach. And he's going to tell us about what obstacles he's had to overcome to still achieve his goals. Brian, take it away.
All right. So, as you mentioned, I have been a pastor, I don't know, probably about 30 years now, and have pretty much done that most of my life as a full-time minister in a church somewhere, moving around a lot. But probably one of the obstacles that I've had to overcome recently, and I say recently, probably within the last 2 years, because I did not start serving at Teen Challenge until about maybe 2 years ago. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Teen Challenge, but Teen Challenge is a ministry that's been around probably since the late 50s, the early 60s. Started in New York City by a pastor named David Wilkerson. And it's actually a worldwide ministry now. It's basically a residential facility for teenagers. It began for teenagers who are at risk. They alcohol, drugs, just being rebellious in general. And so there's facilities for teenage boys, there's facilities for teenage girls, and even adults as well. And so I began working at the facility there in Bonifay, Florida. Where I live at is South Alabama. It's southeast corner of Alabama. It's right on the border of Georgia and Florida. And so I actually work on the campus in Florida. It's just right across the Alabama line. And so when I began working there, it's a military-based structure. It's a Christian ministry, but it's military-based as far as its structure. Now, I had not been in the military, okay, first of all. And so, they're giving all these military commands. They're marching the boys around. And it was culture shock for me in the beginning because these are at-risk teenage boys. And so they're very rebellious and they will challenge you. They will cuss you out. They will do all sorts of things. And so I was seeing boys being held, like in judo type holds. Not really judo holds. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but just to, to kind of put it out there some. And so it was culture shock. And I thought to myself, what in the world have I gotten myself into? Because the majority of my life, I've been a pastor, and now I'm moving into this ministry that's totally different. It's hands-on, military structured, and I'm feeling like this is against everything that I've been for up until this point. Even though at the very core of it is Jesus, it's just very rigid, very very military structure. So it scared me. I was afraid. Really, I just didn't know if I was going to be able to stick with this and make it through it. But I had really felt like this is a door that had opened up to me, and that it was something that I really needed to do and to get into. It was in line with my values and my principles. And so I just did this. All right. obviously I'm a pastor, so I'm going to lean on scripture a lot. So obviously I'm telling my stuff things like I can do all things through Christ that gives me strength. And I'm constantly reminding myself of scriptures like that. I am more than an overcomer. Um, Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. So I'm giving myself this positive scriptural talk. But there's something that I learned from a non Christian resource about how to handle fear. And so what I learned was that you can treat fear like a backseat driver. So fear is always going to be along for the ride. Fear is just going to be there, always, especially when we jump into something new. But fear is in the back seat. It's not actually driving the car, okay? It's not actually driving your life. And so what I've learned to do with fear is to talk to it, just like I would a person in the back seat. So, if I have a little toddler in the back seat, and that's what fear reminds me of, it reminds me of a toddler in the back seat that's making noises and, acting up and watch this, watch that, and all of that kind of stuff. And so what I do is talk to the fear. I acknowledge its presence because just like we do, we want to be acknowledged. We want to know that our presence is being acknowledged. So I just say, hey, fear, I hear you. And I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I appreciate your input, fear. However, I'm driving this vehicle, and I know where we're going, and I'm taking this vehicle where I desire to take this vehicle. And so I just that's what I've learned to do. I just talk to the fear. I say, it's okay. I hear you, and I appreciate your opinion. But, guess what? Today we're going where I'm driving, this vehicle. And so that's just kind of that's even, well, one of the things now that because I'm a counselor, I'm actually the lead counselor on the campus. And that's one of the things I teach the boys. And I said, you can just treat fear like it's a backseat driver. It's trying to tell you where to go. It's trying to tell you what turns to make, or it's telling you not to make certain turns. You just acknowledge it. Just say, I hear you. I know you're there. I appreciate that, that you're so concerned about me that you don't want me to do these things. However, I have decided that this is where I'm going. And so, you can just sit back there, fear, enjoy the ride. Just enjoy the ride, fear. But this is where we're going. And so that's how I actually began to talk to myself about this position that I currently have until I was able to learn it. Because once I began to really learn it and understand the why behind everything, I think that was the biggest thing, not understanding the why. And so once I began to understand the why, then I became much more comfortable. And now I'm right in there, with everybody, loving on the boys and so on and so forth. But I really did. It scared me to death. I'll just be honest with you. I was afraid because I just never worked with 65 boys before that were, hard to handle in a lot of different ways. And then learning that structure. And so I just learned to talk to the fear and just treat it like a backseat driver. So.
That's awesome, Brian. Thanks for all your wit and wisdom on that. Fear can definitely try and control where we're going, and we do have to take control of it and conquer it and move forward with that 20 seconds of courage. All right. Our next speaker tonight is Brandon Wallace. He's actually from Portland, Oregon, and he, of course, is a certified ULA life coach. He's a wellness educator and an adventure enthusiast. So he probably has no fear at all. Brandon specializes in helping men find their ULA life and giving them tools for better health and wellness. Now, when he's not working, Brandon enjoys traveling. And on those adventures, he finds lots of new adventures to enjoy life and connect with his friends. So, Brandon, tell us your story.
Okay. So thanks for having me here tonight. I want to talk about why I view life as an adventure, because it's through my experience with, like Brian, fear and self-sabotage that led me to experience life as an adventure. So when I finished some counseling about 5 years ago, I didn't know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. I was in this time of transition, moving to a new apartment. So a lot of change and things happening that just didn't make any sense as to where my life was going. I had a full-time job. That was pretty much the constant. But what really got me going was a friend of mine approached me and said, hey, maybe you should try something out of your norm. Well, the self-sabotage in me was like, well, I don't know what to do. You want me to go to a place I've never been or do something I've never done? What does that look like? How does that look like? I don't know. Like all these questions, which questions are good in a sense because they kind of make you think. But if you allow yourself to brew on them and not do any action, you're self-sabotaging yourself, and you could really be have an amazing adventure that you could have been having. So what happened with me is I was like, okay, I took it to prayer and said, God, show me what adventure you want me to go on. And 3 days later, I get this email in regards to an article on fitness. And in the article talked about this camp called Camp Nerd Fitness. And so it intrigued me, but I was like, this activity is something that I'm not sure where I'm going. I barely know I don't know anyone that's going to be there. Is this worth doing? And in the back of my mind, God was like, do it and see what happens. And from that experience, and then since that first Camp Nerd Fitness, which was back in 2014, I went the following 3 years and developed new relationships and new friendships that then I still am in contact with today. And so I, from that experience, I then decided, okay, if I can do that one thing, what else can I do in my life that can challenge me to keep moving forward? So then I started looking at my health and wellness. I started looking at my fitness. And a lot of the other things we talk about in ULA with the 7 F's of ULA, those things started to play out in my life. And I was like, okay, how can I start improving myself? And so I started asking more questions. But this time, instead of asking questions and then self-sabotaging those dreams and goals, I instead turned that around and acknowledged, okay, I may be nervous and anxious about joining this ULA Life coaching network when it first got started a year ago. But what can become of it if I actually do it? That's one of the things we talk about in ULA is using that 20 seconds of courage and then ready, set, go. And from those steps, acknowledging, oh, if I do this, I might develop new friendships. I might help someone in an experience that they're going through, whether it's their marriage or finances, and help people become better people. And when I processed all those things, it's like, okay, I need to do this, and started taking actions. And since then, that's what I've been doing, is living life as an adventure and using my health and wellness, both what I've experienced and what I've seen in others, to help people move forward in their dreams and goals. So those are the things that have really I've overcome in the last few years, is a lot of self-sabotage and fear, and using those experiences to now help other people see their goals from where they're at and where they want to go. So.
Awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much for sharing with us. That self-sabotage can certainly cause you to think up more fears that you don't even know you're afraid of, can't it? I know it's certainly done that in my case. I can tell you too, Brandon mentioned that what if he gets more friends if he becomes an ULA life coach? And I have to tell you, when I did my ULA wheel about a year ago, and I measured myself in the 7 key areas of life, friends was not one that was very high. I had lots of acquaintances, but I didn't have any real friends that I felt like really supported me in what I wanted to do in life. And I have to tell you that today I've never had so many friends that I felt like really supported me in what I was doing. These people that are here on this broadcast with me and the other 400 coaches, the ones that I know anyway, have become my friends over the last year, and I dearly appreciate all of them and the friendships that we share. So thank you for bringing that up, Brandon, and allowing me to kind of join in with that sentiment. All right. Our next coach is Christine Koash, and she is an accomplished businesswoman because she is currently the owner and CEO of multiple unit Jenny Craig franchise. She's also, of course, a certified ULA life coach, and she is on the ULA coach support team. So she helps the rest of us. Believe me, she's just one email away and she's got an answer for us. That covers her ULA field pretty well. However, she's most invested in her role as a wife and mother. And she lives in central Nebraska with her husband, Russ, and her teenage son, Zachary. So tonight, Chris, tell us about how you overcame obstacles to achieve all these great things that you've achieved in your life.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate being here. As I was thinking about and preparing to come on and talk about obstacles, I had to go back and really examine what obstacles I've had, just like everybody else. I don't always like to go back and think about challenges. Once I'm through it, I kind of don't want to think about it anymore. So I really had to spend some time going back and thinking about these. And rather than go through a specific story, I noticed right away that there was definitely a pattern in my life. And I think the first piece when we're talking about overcoming obstacles and overcoming things in your life is to understand who you are and how you respond and how you innately move through your own life. And so that's the first piece. Is I would encourage everybody to go through and really do a hard look back to what have you accomplished? How did you do it? And what were your obstacles? Because it's human nature that you have a path on the way you behave. And that's where you will go to unless you consciously choose to go somewhere else. So the first one is become aware of what your own habits and patterns are when you're faced up with a wall or when you're faced up with an obstacle. Okay. The second thing I realized as I was going through, and this is probably more important and more of an area of focus for me now than it ever was before I went to ULA. And that is, did I actually create a goal and prepare for whatever challenge or choice that I was doing? Or was it one of those goals where I said, oh man, I wish I had something really decent to wear tonight? That's kind of a flippant wish. That's not really an obstacle. And sometimes we take that concept and we do it to big things too. Like, I wish I had a car that was more reliable. Well, if you want a car that's more reliable, you have to choose to create a goal and a pattern and a path to get that car that's reliable. You can't just wish for it. So the first thing when you're asking yourself about your obstacles is, did I really create a plan, a path, and a goal to get here? Or is this just a wish? Because if you didn't prepare for it, having an obstacle come up, you can't overcome an obstacle that you didn't prepare for. So that's the first thing, is be aware of, did you actually set a goal and create a plan to overcome this? Because if you didn't, you have to step back and do that. Okay. Now, assuming that you did create, and this is, I'm a fairly structured person in my life in terms of creating frameworks and creating paths to go down, because that's what works for me. So assuming you did create a SMART goal and you created a path and you have action steps that you're getting there, and you still have obstacles that come up. And that's where I have spent the majority of my time looking at, what am I doing? I have to ask myself, and I had a mentor one time that said, when you're really getting hardcore and having to ask yourself questions and get through a tough space, do it in front of a mirror. I know it sounds silly, guys. Sit down in front of a mirror and actually have a conversation and ask yourself this next question actually in front of a mirror, because it makes all the difference in the world. And that is, ask yourself, okay, I'm having a challenge. Is it a no way, a no how, or a no desire challenge? Because if you're coming up to an obstacle, it is going to be one of those three things. Either there's no way that you can achieve this, and you've either set an improper goal, or something has come up that actually makes it impossible. And if that's the case, you have to stop and pivot and reassess what you can actually do. So no way, you have to pivot. Okay. The second one is that it's no how, meaning I don't know how to move forward. I don't know how to get past where I'm at. If you don't know how, if you actually don't feel like you have the skill, or you don't have a clear vision of what's next, you need to reach out to a mentor, or to a friend, or to a minister. You need to reach out to somebody who you can bounce it off of, that can give you some direction or skill, because then you can move through whatever the problem is. Okay. Now, the last one, and quite frankly, this one is more common than any of the other of them, and that is no desire. And that is that you've set a goal that you don't really in your heart want to work for, or that you've lost the passion and the desire to work for right now at this minute. And if that's the case, stop, reassess. And it goes back to what Brandon said, is when you do that, you have to ask yourself, I took my 20 seconds of courage. I did the ready, set, go. Why am I not following through? Because if it was important and if it was on your heart, then it will still be on your heart. And if it wasn't, then again, pivot. So when I come to overcoming an obstacle, first I go through and I really assess, did I prepare for it? And then I have to ask myself, if I prepared for it, is it no way, no how, no desire? And I have to go to a resource, whether it be a pivot, it be a new skill piece, or whether it be my own heart, and decide what's next. I know how to set goals. I know how to create action plans. So if I'm coming up against something and I go through these steps, I will know how to reach my goal, if indeed it's still important to me. That's it.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. Brian, if you need to take a Sunday off, just call Chris. She can fill in for you from church. All right. Our next coach this evening is Miss Susie Bradley, and she is going to speak on the light bulb after loss. Being laser focused with a bright light and overcoming obstacles in her 40s has actually helped her to deepen her passion to help young moms and families with their fitness, faith, and business building and wellness. And she's going to tell you a very personal story about how that brought her to this point. Susie, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be on these panels, and thank you very much, coaches, for sharing your heart, sharing your stories, your wisdom, your vulnerability. I really appreciate listening in, because we're always a client as well as a coach, right? So I am a mama of 3. My kids are 20, 16, and 10. And my husband and I have been together 27 years. And through those years, we've had little and big challenges. We've had huge and small obstacles, but never did we think we would have such an interesting and hard hardship in the last couple of years. So we encountered a surprise pregnancy in the last couple of years. I was 43, he was 45, and it was very welcomed, very exciting. After lots of wrapping our head around it and starting over, we have a 21-year-old or almost 21-year-old starting over. We thought of it with lots of giggles, hugs, oh my goodnesses, and lots of wows. Like, I can't believe this is happening. But we gathered ourselves and told our boys that they're going to be big brothers again. And so after a few ultrasounds to confirm, and we were feeling good and all was well, and I'm in the healthiest shape of my life, I thought, okay, we're doing this. I'm going to be very old when this child graduates from high school, but it's okay. We're healthy and happy and all is well. So I made an appointment to hear the heartbeat for this little peanut that was going to be born in June, and we just wanted to make sure we had vitality and life before we told our little 10-year-old. But the day before that appointment, it was a day that God decided he needed that little one in heaven more than I needed the little one here on earth. And actually never told this story yet, so it's going to be a little hard to get through, but just once, actually, I told the story in MOPS. And I apologize for being late, actually. I just came from a MOPS meeting where I got to love on them and invite them to a workshop, Chaos to Calm for Moms workshop. But the day before we were supposed to hear that heartbeat, God took our little one to heaven. And so it was a very difficult day. I was at work and just had to be rushed to the hospital. But what we found that day when we lost our little Olivia Taylor, I decided to name her, that God is the author of our story. We realized that it is not my story to write. It is certainly through our action steps and planning. We have a beautiful way of deciding what we love to do in this life, and we can be intentional, but really God has the pen. He's writing the story. So that perspective was so amazing, and it helped us to trust him and not the circumstances in life, because they can be very difficult, but trust him through that, because that is really where we have our hub. Our hub is in Christ, and our hub is leaning on him in the hard times and the good times, right? So 4 days later, I had to pull myself together and I had to press on. I was coordinating 50 vendors and 800 holiday shoppers in my annual holiday boutique here in town. It was exhausting. I was still going through that miscarriage process. I was tired, but it was an effective distraction with many fellow entrepreneur friends seeking their purpose, sharing their talents. And it was really beautiful to stand back and just watch them do their thing with my friend and I, who had coordinated this really neat event that we just love doing. We love watching people fill their purpose with their passion. And so that was a really nice distraction. God taught me to press on in the midst of this pain and this obstacle, to trust his purpose for me, and to become a lighthouse with laser focus instead of a dim light flashlight. And I know Cindy the other night was talking about that, that it really struck her to be a laser focused light instead of just a dim flashlight. And we talk about that in ULA as far as focus. So our story shapes us. I'm not afraid to tell the story anymore. I've told it one-on-one to some potential clients and friends and young moms who have been just going through this. But what I learned through this whole thing, and it was a little epiphany, I can relate to those wanting to redirect their focus from broad and dim to laser and streamlined just by telling our story and not being afraid to talk about the obstacles that we have had in our lives. So my little epiphany, even just the other day preparing for this, is that I was rebranding and really excited about my social media. And really what I figured is, with the coaching that we're doing here in this amazing ULA community, my social media, which has always been a big push and a big presence, is kind of icing on the cake. My more laser focused is that I love my community. I love the young moms in my community. I want them to be more fit and have fun in their fitness and faith building and really getting out there and building their business and being a momtrepreneur. And I love being the cheerleader, the coach, the gatherer, event planner. That's my purpose. But I love loving on young mamas to help them calm their chaos. So that's really my niche. Anyway, so sharing that story of loss in my 40s to young mamas has really helped me to hone in that my story can help and relate to others. It helps me to lean on the Lord more, but it also helps me to use that obstacle to overcome and connect with people and really solidify that I've been there. I've been there with you. I can walk you through it. Whether it's one-on-one or a 10-week course, I just want to solidify that passion and bring in the ULA framework that works so well. So being intentional, goal setting, and having more of a calm life was really that little epiphany during this last week of deciding how I was going to talk about my obstacles. So God heals. He propels us to have courage and to share our stories. He helps us to go from being dim to a laser beam, and that will help us focus. And so I got through it. I said the first time I've ever told this story. So I appreciate you guys listening. I'm still healing, but in the midst of that healing, I certainly love to love on others who I can hopefully potentially help. So thank you for having me.
Susie, you never have to apologize. You share your love and your light every day. And I see it on social media. And you are a wonderful example of what we should all be as a coach. So don't ever apologize for doing what you do. Okay. Oh, our last and final coach tonight is Sheila Fox Tam. She is actually a massage therapist. So if anyone needs a massage, now you know who to call. And she's also a holistic life coach, certified with ULA, as well as she has an integrative health certification, which she just recently got, I believe. Her mission is actually to help busy moms and teens find more balance by addressing their time and energy management. She creates customized plans incorporating the principles of ULA, which to help her to get her own life back on track. And she is a fine example of the ULA framework working in someone's life. She uses her training and other modalities to offer a holistic approach to healing. So Sheila, tell us your story tonight.
Well, thank you. I haven't been on in a while. I'm a little rusty, so I actually typed my story out, which I think is better when you just speak off the cuff. So thank you. It was so nice to meet you, Coach Brian, and fear and being the backseat driver. That imagery that you gave about the drive is in my head. And Brendan, just again, the why that came up when I was writing this last night behind the actions. And then Chris gave kind of like brought that full circle with all of her suggestions. And I think I'm gonna have to go back and write them down, but just the concept that when we set a goal, like, are we really setting a goal, or is this something vaguely we're saying we're going to do? Are we setting ourselves up for an obstacle? And Susie, I know that story. I love you, sweetheart. So I'm just, all the feels. It's hard to just kind of go right into my story after, you shared something so deep and so sentimental with us. So thank you for opening your heart up, lady. So two things that I thought of when I was getting ready to share my story is that there's two types of obstacles, really. There's like the obstacles that you have that you create in your head. And then they're the literal obstacles that are blocking your path. So last month, for example, I had set a goal to get my rebranding photos done and to start the process of redesigning my website. And I was coming off such a strong, successful streak. It was like such a great August. I accomplished all my goals with a team coaching program written and an integrative health certification, coaching certification completed. And I was just feeling really like pumped and excited. And I'm like, we're just going to accelerate through another month. Like that was my feeling going into September. It was like, I can do this. Like I can do anything. I think we all know what happens next, right? So I woke up Tuesday morning, a few days into September, and I was turning my head on my side. With the tenderness, it was kind of radiating through my my left ear, and it wouldn't go away. And at first I thought, oh, maybe I just slept funny. I was not really awake. So I gave it a few minutes for the pain to subside, and it didn't. So I got up and I went to the bathroom, and I noticed that there was a growth inside on my ear, on my upper part of my earlobe, and it was stiffening and it was causing my ear to enlarge. Like literally, it was like a Dumbo ear. It was much larger than my other ear. I was a little scared, but I mean, I didn't know what it was. So I waited a day just to see maybe if this was just like a fluke, and maybe I just ate something. And I made an appointment to see my doctor, and she had no idea what happened to my ear. But she gave me an antibiotic, and I was hesitant to kind of cash in on that prescription because I don't really do prescriptions, very holistic. So I went to see my acupuncturist the next day on Friday, and she confirmed that she had never seen anything like it. So now I'm getting really freaked out. I did feel better from the needling, but it didn't change the condition in my ear that night. So Friday night went and got my prescription. I decided, to go on the antibiotics, and a few days later I had no change. So on Monday, which was almost a week later, I then had to contact my doctor again so she could refer me to talk to a dermatologist. So I had a telehealth on Monday with my dermatologist, going back and forth with pictures. And she determined that I had some sort of cyst. It's like a boxer's ear, which when boxers get hit in the ear, they get this cyst on their ear. And that's so strange, I'm thinking, because I didn't have any trauma to my ear. So again, I'm in complete, confusion about how all this happened. And I have all these goals that I want to hit in September. So I didn't obviously need the antibiotics anymore. So I went off that. I had to make an appointment to see the dermatological surgeon. But first, I needed to get a COVID test and self-isolate 2 days prior to seeing the surgeon for possible Mohs procedure on my ear. So there were only like specific days that you could see the doctor. So I had to wait another week. And then I had to, all my clients, I was working at a new location. All my clients had to get moved so that I could see the doctor. So all that work went on my new employers, and I was feeling just really out of control. Like this is just, not the way I envisioned this month at all. So once I saw the doctor, he told me I had two choices. He could cut out the cyst and stitch it up, and that would be quite a bit of recovery, or he could give me a steroid shot, which would be like a 50-50 chance that it would actually work, and it would take about 2 to 3 weeks to see the results. So of course, I'm opting for the shot, and next week will be week 3, and it is getting better. It's getting much, much better. It's not completely gone, but we'll see what he says when he sees it next week. So this is what happened as a result of all these things happening last month. My rebranding pictures never happened. I was so mentally frustrated. I was blocked from redesigning my website, so that didn't happen. And I actually set a goal to start a detox on September 14th, and then I was going to do some lab tests prior to the detox, but because I went on the antibiotic, I couldn't do the lab test for another 4 to 6 weeks to get the antibiotic out of my system. So now I'm not doing the detox, and I basically gave up on that. So September was really shaping up to be like a colossal failure. Little obstacles were in my path. Like this year just created one obstacle after another in my life, and those were my saboteurs. So I'm going to share in a minute like the outcome and the realizations that came from that experience. But first, I kind of wanted to circle back to the first obstacle that I mentioned, which was the one that you create in your head. And those are the silent whispers in your head that tell you, you aren't good enough, you aren't worthy, you don't need to work harder, your body is fine the way it is, people don't like me, I'll never be able to double my income, I'll never get out of debt. Do you recognize like any of these thoughts? Any of you guys? Okay. Because sometimes the obstacles in our head are worse than the obstacles blocking our path because they freeze us, like they disable us and they paralyze us from taking action. So kind of circling back to my story, I was feeling the feels of like a completely fallen month, a failure. I felt like a failure. I felt like an imposter, someone who shirked away from challenges just because things didn't go her way. And then I had a realization. I could stay in this frame of mind and state that things didn't work out exactly how I planned, or I could make a different choice, a harder choice, accept the failure and move on. And then I imagined how I would feel on November 1st with no rebranding pictures, no redesigned website, and no detox completed. And I imagined how that would help me reach my bigger goal of doubling my income and relocating to a new home next year. And suddenly those images, those dreams began to fade. They began to slip away from me. And that fear, the fear of losing out on some bigger goals in 2021, because of one botched month in 2020, wasn't worth it. So I did this process that we have in ULA. It's called the Ready, Set, Go process. And once you start doing it, it just becomes something that you integrate into your pattern when you get into a blocker. And so it works like this. So I identified the blocker. I was like, all right, this is self-sabotage. And then I told myself, if I stay in this place, my bigger dreams and goals won't happen. They're going to slip away from me. And if I change now and I reboot in October, I'll still be in fantastic shape to hit my goals. I'm like, I'll still be okay. Like, I can still make all this happen. So that's what I did. And do you guys know what happened? Within a few days, I connected with a web designer and I drew my line in the sand for my rebranding photo shoot. I just put the date. I was so scared, but I just put the date on the calendar. I'm like, it's just going to happen. And I'm proud to say that I had my first haircut like in over a year yesterday. And I had the most amazing photo shoot like I've ever had in my life yesterday. 2 days ago, I had my second meeting with my web designer, and she nailed my vision for my website with a storyboard that was so spot on. And today is day 16 of my 21-day detox. And so what if the labs happen after my detox? It's not a big deal. So I let go of my expectations and it just got out of my head. That was my worst enemy. And so a month ago, I was reeling in frustration. I was so blinded, like by everything that was going wrong, I completely shut down. And then 4 weeks later, I'm hitting my goals. So some things take a little longer, you know, and sometimes we get derailed and sometimes our will is tested. Our will is tested to see how badly we want our goals. And sometimes the timing is better than we could ever have imagined. So next time you have an obstacle, I want you to ask yourself, is this a mental obstacle? Is it a literal obstacle? Is it a mix of both? And why is this showing up for me now? And how can I process through this? So use the Ready, Set, Go, and then find someone that you can talk to. Like Chris said, find someone that you can talk to who you trust to support you and keep you accountable on those goals. That's it.
Excellent advice, Sheila. I was worried. I thought it was, oh boy, it's going to be a bad September, but you pulled it out of the fire just like you always do. That 20 seconds of courage you have. So we've been talking tonight about obstacles that get in our way. And if we were to translate that to ULA, kind of principles or some things that are in this book, ULA, Find Balance in an Unbalanced World. The blockers that Sheila mentioned and some of the other coaches mentioned, are fear, guilt, anger, self-sabotage, right, Brandon? Laziness, envy, we didn't talk about tonight, I don't think, and a lack of focus. So those blockers are all described here in this book. And if you get the book, you can find out about the accelerators that help you overcome those. So we'll leave a link here in our comments that you can actually order the book if you like. And we'll also leave a link to the coaches directory so you can find these coaches. And of course, many of them are on Facebook, so you can probably find them on Facebook as well. So all of us would love to help you in any way that we can serve you. And if you can think of something that we can help you with and would like us to coach you in any way, you can certainly reach out to us there or on the link that we'll provide you. So we hope you've enjoyed our presentations tonight of overcoming obstacles. And we'll hope to see you and talk to you next time on our next live next week, next Wednesday night. Have a great week, everyone.